In the darkest hours of the 20th century, as the world was engulfed in war, a quiet revolution was taking place, not on the battlefield, but on the factory floor. While armies clashed across continents, American industry was waging a different kind of war, a war of production, a war of scale, a war of speed. By the end of World War II, the United States had produced more planes, more tanks, more ships, and more ammunition than all the Axis powers combined. But how did this happen? How did a nation that was still recovering from the Great Depression become the arsenal of democracy? To understand this, we must go back, not just to Pearl Harbor, but to the very roots of American industrial culture. In the 1930s, the United States was a nation in recovery. The Great Depression had crippled much of the economy, but it had also laid the groundwork for transformation. New Deal programs had invested in infrastructure, electrified rural areas, and modernized transportation. These changes, though not designed for war, would soon prove critical. Meanwhile, American industry was undergoing a quiet evolution. Mass production, pioneered by Henry Ford in the 1910s, had matured. Assembly lines were faster, more efficient, and more standardized than ever before. And perhaps most importantly, American companies had learned how to scale. This capacity for scale would become the decisive factor in the years to come. When war broke out in Europe in 1939, the United States remained officially neutral, but President Franklin D. Roosevelt saw the storm on the horizon. In 1940, he launched the National Defense Advisory Commission, signaling the beginning of a massive rearmament effort. Still, the scale of what was to come was unimaginable. After the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941, the full machinery of American industry was mobilized. Civilian factories were converted almost overnight. Automobile plants stopped making cars and began producing tanks and aircraft engines. Typewriter companies started manufacturing rifles. Refrigerator plants turned to making machine gun parts. This transformation was not just about patriotism, it was about coordination, logistics, and leadership. In January 1942, the War Production Board was established. Its mission: to allocate materials, standardize products, and eliminate waste. Under the leadership of Donald Nelson, a former Sears executive, the board became the nerve center of the American war economy. It wasn't perfect. There were bottlenecks, shortages, and fierce debates between military planners and industrialists. But over time, a system emerged, one that balanced military needs with industrial capabilities. Standardization became a key principle. Instead of producing dozens of different tank models, the U.S. focused on a few reliable designs, like the M4 Sherman. Instead of custom-built aircraft, factories churned out standardized bombers and fighters by the thousands. This approach allowed for unprecedented speed and volume. Unlike the centrally planned economies of Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union, the United States relied heavily on private industry. But this wasn't laissez-faire capitalism. It was a unique partnership between government and business. Major corporations like General Motors, Ford, Boeing, and Bethlehem Steel became the backbone of the war effort. But so did thousands of smaller firms, many of which had never produced military goods before. The results were staggering. By 1945, American factories had produced over 300,000 aircraft, 88,000 tanks, and more than 2 million trucks. Shipyards launched a new Liberty ship every 3 days. And in a single year, the United States produced more war goods than Germany had in the entire war. This wasn't just about machines, it was about people. Unlike the centrally planned economies of Nazi Germany or the Soviet Union, the United States relied heavily on private industry.
But this wasn't laissez-faire capitalism. It was a unique partnership between government and business. Major corporations like General Motors, Ford, Boeing, and Bethlehem Steel became the backbone of the war effort. But so did thousands of smaller firms, many of which had never produced military goods before. The results were staggering. By 1945, American factories had produced over 300,000 aircraft, 88,000 tanks, and more than 2 million trucks. Shipyards launched a new Liberty ship every 3 days. And in a single year, the United States produced more war goods than Germany had in the entire war. This wasn't just about machines, it was about people.
Behind every tank, every plane, every bullet were millions of American workers, men who were too old or too young to fight, women who stepped into roles once reserved for men, African Americans who demanded and slowly gained greater access to industrial jobs. The war effort reshaped the American workforce. Between 1940 and 1945, the number of women in the workforce grew by nearly 50%. Rosie the Riveter became a national icon, but she was just one of millions. Training programs were launched across the country. In some cases, workers learned to build complex aircraft in just a few weeks. Efficiency was measured, improved, and rewarded. This was not just a war of machines, it was a war of minds and hands.
Production alone wasn't enough. The real challenge was getting those goods where they were needed, across oceans, through jungles, over mountains. Here, too, American industry excelled. The U.S. built more cargo ships than any other nation. It developed portable airstrips, mobile repair units, and prefabricated buildings. The Red Ball Express, a convoy system operated largely by African American drivers, kept Allied forces supplied after the D-Day invasion. This logistical capacity gave the Allies a decisive edge. While Axis powers struggled with shortages and bottlenecks, American forces were often oversupplied. In war, abundance can be a weapon, and the United States wielded it with precision. To truly grasp the scale of American production, we must compare it to the rest of the world. Germany, despite its early victories, never fully mobilized its economy until late in the war. Hitler feared the social consequences of total war. Factories remained underutilized. Women were largely kept out of the workforce. Japan, though industrious, lacked access to critical raw materials and faced constant bombardment. Its industrial base was simply too small to match American output. The Soviet Union, under Stalin, achieved remarkable feats of production, but at immense human cost. Entire factories were relocated east of the Urals, and millions of workers labored under brutal conditions. In contrast, the United States combined scale, coordination, and relative safety. Its factories were untouched by enemy bombs, its workers were well-fed and well-trained, and its economy, far from collapsing under the weight of war, emerged stronger than ever. When the war ended in 1945, the United States stood alone as the world's industrial superpower. Its factories had not only won the war, they had reshaped the world. The post-war boom, the rise of consumer culture, the birth of the modern middle class, all were made possible by the wartime transformation of American industry. But the legacy runs deeper. The techniques developed during the war, mass production, logistics, systems engineering, became the foundation of modern manufacturing. The partnership between government and industry became a model for future innovation, from the space race to the digital age. And perhaps most importantly, the war proved that in times of crisis, a free society could mobilize with speed, unity, and purpose. Today, we live in a world shaped by that industrial miracle. The machines have changed, the workers have changed, but the lesson remains. When called upon, American industry did not just meet the challenge, it outproduced the world. And in doing so, it helped preserve the freedom that made such achievement possible. What does it take to turn a nation into the engine of victory? Perhaps it begins not with machines, but with belief, the belief that free people, working together, can build not just weapons, but a better future.